Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positivity here on the show. And with me right now, I've got a very special guest. He is a ring announcer, has worked in several different promotions across the Kentucky area. Pleased to welcome the one and only Aaron Rose to Wrestling with Heart. Welcome, Aaron.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So tell me about your childhood.
Well, my childhood was very, almost kind of that quintessential family life. I was raised by my parents, and we grew up in a little suburb outside of Lexington, Kentucky. And early on in my life, I got blessed with many different things because my father was a computer programmer for a local NBC affiliate in Lexington. And it was kind of cool because growing up, you'd always get free tickets to stuff. I mean, it was fun. I got to experience that kind of stuff early on in my life. But I love both of my parents dearly. My dad passed away in 21.
I'm so sorry.
But my mom is she's still with us, and she lives in the same town as my family because she wants to be able to look in on her granddaughter and help out whenever we need help and stuff like that. So grew up with a very loving family. And it was, I was very blessed and very lucky to have that kind of upbringing.
Yeah, you had mentioned your dad working for the NBC affiliate in Lexington. Was that kind of where your interest in broadcasting started?
Well, actually, no, because I only saw the behind the scenes stuff. He was a programmer, and he was the kind of guy who would make sure that all the systems were working. He was very technical in what he did. I did get to meet some of the local personalities here, and they knew who I was. I knew who they were, and it was cool. But that wasn't the start of it. I will say this: I've always had a knack for being in front of people. If I wasn't a band kid, I probably would have been a drama kid. But band did consume a lot of my high school years. But it started as early as being, I think it was fifth grade. We actually, I hosted the talent show at my local elementary school. I was the host of it at fifth grade. And normally that was something that the adults would do, the teachers would do. But my dad had a knack for like writing scripts and stuff like that too. So that's how I got in front of people for the first time, was doing stuff like that, and being in choir. I sung too.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, growing up with such a unique background in the arts, I think that's very awesome. Someone that's also in that same realm, that same field, I can definitely attest to being just enthralled with that industry, the entertainment industry as a whole. So cool. So you hosted shows, emceed, doing some theater, music.
Mm-hmm.
Where did the love of wrestling come in? Was that something you enjoyed as a kid?
It was, it, it dates back all the way to when I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. It was something that my grandfather would always love to do. We would go out they lived in a little town. I mean, one stoplight, if that, maybe two. And we would go to a little diner on Saturday mornings, wake up early, go to a little diner on Saturday mornings. And he'd always love to watch Memphis wrestling. That was his thing. And he started showing me, started showing that to me. And then we started watching like Superstars and stuff like that. And then my very first show I got to go to in person was at Rupp Arena. And I was talking about the free tickets a little bit earlier.
Hmm.
WWF at the time, that was one of them. So it was me, my dad, my grandfather, and my uncle. It was a guy's day, and we went to witness my very first WWF event, headlined by the Mountie versus Bret the Hitman Hart for the Intercontinental Championship. And it was also around the time that Ric Flair had just jumped. So we got to see Ric Flair for the first time. And he actually had the big gold belt at that event, which
Wow.
at the time I didn't know the significance of it. I was 6 years old. I didn't know the significance of it. But then all of a sudden I go back and think about it. I'm like, he actually wore the big gold belt at that event. I mean, that was so cool.
And it was rare to see too, because in those times, especially, you couldn't go to another promotion wearing the other promotion's belt like
Right.
that. I mean, it's huge. The only other time I feel like that happened was Medusa
Mm-hmm.
throwing the belt in the trash can on
Yep.
Nitro, the women's champion, the WWE Women's Championship, in the trash can on Nitro. So rare occasion that actually happens. But Flair, that was a big deal with him going to WWE at the time.
It was, yeah, it was very unprecedented the way that was handled. And and a few years later, obviously with all the social media and stuff that's really risen up, I saw the post where Gary Michael Capetta had to announce that Ric Flair was no longer with the company, and just how people reacted to that. That was pretty cool to see like all that come full circle.
Yeah, I mean, back then you didn't really have the internet to really explain like what was going on. You had to
Mm-hmm.
find out through newsletters or through TV.
Or the
And
hotline.
yeah, or the hotline. Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how much times have changed and evolved. Who are some of your favorite wrestlers growing up?
um, my all-time favorite was Macho Man Randy Savage. 100% loved to watch Savage wrestle. Didn't matter where he was at. As I got older and I was able to start seeking out tapes and stuff, I was able to see his stuff with ICW because my father had an old friend who taped all of those events, all those shows, whenever they came through, because he too was in the television industry. And you know, they recorded those shows at WTVQ in Lexington, and he was able to preserve some of those, so that was cool to see. Um, I think as well, like regionally, I was always a big Jerry Lawler fan too. That's one of the guys I first grew up watching. Um, Jerry Lawler, Sting is one of my favorites. I loved seeing his career come to an end like it did. It's kind of like a good storybook ending.
Hmm.
Um, and then, of course, you have to talk about, when you talk about the great characters of wrestling, Undertaker was one of my absolute favorites as well. I mean, it's just, you want to talk about a character that was able to be preserved so well
Hmm.
from 1990 to when he retired. I mean, that was over 30 years of one guy. Now, obviously, it changed, the personas changed, and how he looked changed, but he was still always the Undertaker.
Yeah, I mean, definitely through, the Dead Man to the Ministry to American Badass to Big Evil, then back to Dead Man, and it's just unbelievable to see that transformation really happen. And yeah, I mean, that's a character really that has stood the test of time
Mm-hmm.
for 30 plus years. People still remember and will always remember to this day the Undertaker. Uh, what was it about Undertaker to you that really stood out in your mind? Like, this guy is
When
someone that.
whenever he entered an arena, he brought an aura with him. And it was always a larger than life type thing. It was the whole supernatural thing. It was different than some of the other stuff that you had seen. And no matter what show you were at, whenever he entered that arena, people paid attention. And for me, that was just like that yes moment to really, I got to see him a few times, but one of my favorite moments was seeing him inside Louisville Gardens for a Monday Night Raw taping. And it was at the time when they were starting to go to that new generation thing, when they are starting to include like more lights and fireworks and stuff like that. So adding those elements into it just made it that much better.
Yeah.
And it was just every time it never failed. Whenever you saw Undertaker at an arena, it was awesome.
Definitely the constant, really, when so many guys had left, like Hogan and Bret Hart and Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, all those guys leaving, Rock and Austin, all those guys were gone within a span of a few years, several years. So many guys over the course of that time period, Hogan, Hall, Nash, Bret Hart, Rock, Austin, those guys were gone within a span of several years, but
Right.
there was one guy that was the constant that stuck around during all those years. That was The Undertaker.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he was really the glue that kept that company together, especially during times that weren't so great. Again, I kind of talk about that new generation era. That was the era that just kept Hogan had just jumped, Macho Man had just jumped, and they were looking for that person to really lead it. And I think Undertaker became that locker room general for him.
And then to this day, a lot of people credit him for being that leader, over the course of time. And that gimmick will forever live on, even
Oh yeah.
past, you know, The
And
Undertaker.
it's an inspiration too for some of the other characters doing the supernatural stuff right now. You look at like Bray Wyatt, when he was still with us, and the Wyatt Six, what they're doing now. He was kind of the inspiration and kind of the leader of that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely someone that I feel like was gone too soon.
Mm-hmm.
Just that was a sad moment when he
It
passed away.
it was, and I being a wrestling fan, when you see somebody lose their life that tragically, it does stick with you. It sticks with you no matter who you are. I mean, imagine if it was like a celebrity that you like to watch in movies and stuff like that, it would be the same effect.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Eddie Guerrero passed away.
Mm,
I was just a small child, and it was just a sad. I was 10 years old. It was just a sad, tragic death. I was in shock.
right. Yeah.
You remember that,
Oh
when you
yeah.
hear about your favorite wrestler passing away, you remember that feeling. And
Hmm.
that was me with Eddie Guerrero because it was just devastating.
Yeah.
What really inspired you to really get into the business? Because, when you're a fan, you grow up watching these guys. At some point, you go, how can I do this? How can I get involved somehow? Whether it's a wrestler, an announcer, commentator, referee, manager. What was your story like?
So, back in 2004, I was a DJ at the Lexington Ice Center, and I got approached by a guy who was the videographer for the University of Kentucky hockey team, and he said, "Hey, there's nobody in Kentucky that really does this, and unless you're a professional team, but I need a play-by-play guy." I'm like, "Okay." I said, "I don't know a dang thing about hockey, when it comes to calling it. I know the rules, I know the positions, I know everything about that. I just don't know how to call it." And he's like, his words were, "Yeah, you'll be okay, kid. You'll learn. You'll learn." So we get in there and I start doing games, and we get a few listeners. It's mainly parents and stuff like that. And parents email me. They're like, "Hey, you're doing good. I like that. That's pretty neat." So I kept getting better and better and better at it. And then as I kept doing that, I started to look at other avenues to be in media. So from there, I had a friend who was a producer at the ESPN station here in Lexington, the radio station. And he approached me about maybe coming to work with that group. And they were a cluster of 6 stations, which I know your radio background, you know all about the station clusters.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to be an on-site engineer for all their like live remotes and stuff like that for a while. And then I got into traffic reporting from there. They needed a voice. I said, you know what, I'll give it a go. So one of my friends who's a wrestler, he actually heard me and he's like, "I have an idea." And I said, "Okay." He said, "I did not, or he said, I'm like, as an announcer right now, I'm getting ready to get quote unquote fired because they're getting ready to put me into a manager position." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Have you ever thought about doing ring announcing?" I said, "A little bit, but not a lot." And I told him, I said, "I've done some play-by-play and I've done some PA announcing, but I've never really thought about it. I love wrestling. I want to give it a go." He said, "Come to a show, see what it's like, and then we'll talk to the promoters and we'll see about getting you in there." Well, I show up to the show, and that night they got me in the ring as an announcer. So right then and there. So that was with KCW. That was one of the first promotions I worked with. And that core group of guys also worked for one of the longest running promotions in Kentucky called the Mountain Wrestling Association. They folded in 2013, and that was after 42 years of business. So very, very long running promotion. That one was started by Dale TNT Man. And, and it just kept on going through the years. I got involved with the MWA as well. And that's where I really honed my skills to do a lot of other things as well. Where I, learned to do more wrestling commentary. I learned how to use Photoshop and make posters, and I learned how to do websites and I did a lot for them. I learned being a multi-tool player in wrestling will get you a lot of different bookings in a lot of different places. Mm-hmm. And so it's not just, hey, I'm a ring announcer and that's it. It's like, hey, I'm a ring announcer. I'm a commentator. I can produce, I can do websites, I can do posters. I learned how to do a lot of that. So, I was very, became very skilled in that. And in turn, that kind of led me to more things. Like there's a wrestler that you all may know from Impact Wrestling. He used to wrestle for Impact, named Legendary Larry D. He teamed with AC Romero for a short time during the COVID years of Impact Wrestling. And Larry started a promotion called Primetime Wrestling up here in Kentucky. And I was his number 2. I was the guy that did everything backstage. I got all the music together. I got all the, I did the ring announcing. I did the posters. Everything I did for MWA, I did for Primetime Wrestling too. And that's how I, learned, the facets of social media as well. So, those were my main players for a few years. And then I got to work later on with a promoter named John Bullard. And we worked with a promotion called Pro Wrestling Freedom. And those years, it kind of showed me the different sides of independent wrestling, because the independent wrestling I worked with was, let's face it was a little bit more Memphis style, but where we were at, that was perfect for that area. They were very good at playing to the crowds that were watching them. And then Pro Wrestling Freedom was kind of your more, almost went super indie style, where a little bit more hard hitting and stuff like that. You got to see guys that you typically wouldn't see in the Kentucky area. So I got to do a lot of work with them too. So it just kind of blew up very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a very well immersed into the business, and getting that well-rounded experience is very important, and especially in any facet of entertainment, broadcasting as well, knowing how to edit and shoot
Oh, yeah.
video and doing stuff online and doing stuff using different software, different pieces of software, that's important. And by social media, working with that too, that's also a very important skill. So
Right.
that's good for you for doing that.
It was I definitely learned a lot. All the while, in the middle of all that, I got married in 2010 to my college sweetheart that I met in 2004. So we dated for about 6 years, and we got married in 2010. And throughout doing all of that, I started to realize that I needed to kind of slow down a little bit. I was doing a lot of different promotions. I was working with a lot of promotions. And we were focused on wanting to kind of build our family and get financially stable and stuff like that. And we know in wrestling there's not a lot of money. It is what it is, unless you're working the big shows. So from 2015 or sorry, from 2014, I slowed down my bookings. 2015, I was mainly just working for Primetime Wrestling, doing an on-air GM role. And then in 2016, I stepped away from it altogether. And it wasn't because I hated it. It wasn't because I was burnt out. It was just the focus needed to change a little bit. So from that point, I focused on my full-time career more than anything. And I was in the cell phone industry. Woo, but it was cool because the cell phone industry was ever evolving. It was. I mean, it was so cool to see how everything had gone from basic phones all the way up to smartphones, and how all that was changing. And in 2019, I was getting ready to have a pretty prominent role with Samsung. And in 2020, I got invited to their national retail meeting, and I impressed some people, and they were ready to move me up in the company. And then COVID happened.
Yep.
And I lost my job, as did a lot of people, and the position that they were wanting to move me into went away. So my future in that industry was pretty much gone. It's kind of going back to square one. And later in 2020, I was able to get a position with a local cell phone company here in Winchester, where I live. And then in 2021, that's where my life took a major change. I was taking I was taking doing things a little bit differently. I was doing my job, and then I was also Twitch streaming, and I was burning the candle at both ends pretty heavily. And one day my body said, all right, I've had enough of that. And I ended up getting pneumonia and not from COVID. It wasn't from COVID. I ended up getting pneumonia and went to the hospital. And they said, "Yep, you got pneumonia." Or I went to the urgent care clinic. They're like, "Yep, you got pneumonia. We're gonna give you a steroid. We're gonna give you an antibiotic. Just take it easy." I did, but things started to get worse and worse and worse until that Saturday after I got diagnosed. It was Wednesday I got diagnosed, so that Saturday, I ended up getting to a point where I was just delirious. I couldn't breathe. It was getting worse and worse and worse. And my wife took me to the hospital. They checked me in, and I don't remember a thing after that until I woke up a week later because they had to put me into a coma. Yeah. I was in a medically induced coma for a week. My body lost its ability to walk, to move muscles freely. Couldn't do any of that. When I woke up, I was still in ICU, still fighting off pneumonia. When I was in a coma, my kidneys started to shut down, so they had to start doing dialysis on me. So it was a very scary situation. And, after I'd woken up, I was informed by my nurses, especially one nurse who got, when I went to a regular room, she was my nurse that night, and she looked at me and she's like, "That name seems familiar." And I said, "Well, I was in ICU on a ventilator." She said, "Oh, honey, I thought you weren't going to make it." Well, okay then.
Unbelievable.
Right. So, I'm going to be that person. Obviously the doctors knew what they were doing, but also I'll tell you the power of prayer works, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I got out of the hospital, I spent a week in therapy and learn how to walk again with assistance, obviously, because, it's a very long process. And I got to go home. The next day I was at church the next day. and they said, the pastor said, "Aaron, you're a walking miracle." So, that's where things change. That's where perspective changed. All the while, my parents were getting ready to move down here to our big city, and my dad and I started having a conversation. He said, "Have you ever thought about getting back into wrestling? Do you miss it?" I said, 100% I do. I said, "But I'm not in a position to do that right now." And he said, I know. But if you ever get the chance to do it, and if it works, if it works for you and the family, give it a go again." And I said, "I'll do that. I'll do that. I do miss it." And after that conversation, the very next day he passed away. Because he was dealing with kidney failure, and he was on dialysis. And one day his port that they do the dialysis with went bad, and they took him to the hospital. And when they put him under to get the port replaced, he passed away right there. So, so I told myself, I said, after all that, I'm just like, well, life has changed, but if I get the opportunity, I'm going to do it. Sure enough, later that year, I went to attend an event at one of the breweries here in Kentucky, and an old promoter friend of mine who I also worked for, his name was Tony Presley, and he promoted the first iteration of New South Wrestling that was up in Kentucky from it was NWA New South for years. And then he moved it up to Kentucky, just became New South Wrestling. And then he stepped away to be with his family. And he was like, I'm ready to get back into it. And he said, if I get back into it, do you want to be my announcer? I said, 100%. Let's do it.
Wow, what an inspiring story. I mean, it's so unfortunate that, you had that horrible, horrible disease or horrible illness, and then being able to walk again, being able to get up. I mean, that's it's tough to do that when you're going through such pain, and the fact that you were able to live out your dream and have that conversation with your dad, uh, despite what happened later. I mean, it's quite a positive turnaround for you because you're able to do the thing that you love and enjoy doing, and it's the thing that gives you the most happiness. And that's the most important thing.
And the thing too is, I'm able to do it all the while I'm able to support my family because I have a great job, a great full-time job with a company out of Georgetown where I'm able to work from home and in the office. So we're able to flex. It wouldn't be possible if I didn't have that, and I felt like having that piece was maybe, the thing that was able to push me into it some more.
Yeah.
And I have the support of my wife. I have the support of my kid. They know there are some very long weekends without me. Because I do travel quite a bit. Because nowadays, New South is on a hold right now, but I'm working for Larry D with Generation X Pro Wrestling. I'm working with Next Gen Wrestling down in the Knoxville area. And that's with guys like Breeze and Fandango, Matt Cross, Penta was there recently. It was cool. I mean, it's a really fun promotion to go check out. And I'm doing a lot of production work with Appalachian Mountain Wrestling up here in Kentucky. I work for Shane Mercer and XCF. Uh, you know, I mean, and one of the other promotions I work with called EWA. They're about 15, 20 minutes from my house. So I'm loving that part. But I'm getting around, and it, I thought for a while, that this might be a flash in the pan thing, but no. I mean, it's the stories that I'm hanging on to with my father, and it's the stories the conversations I'm having with him that I hang on to, and that's what gives me the motivation. Again, and my family gives me the motivation to keep going as well. So it's I love what I'm doing, and I want to get out more. I'm just in a little tri-state area right now, but I would love to get out and see other promotions, work with other promotions, because I feel like all my past experience and my motivation brings a lot to the table.
Yes. I mean, you talked about all the things that you've done, ring announcer, commentator, social media. Um, what is your goal in the wrestling business? Where do you see yourself in the next few years?
Would I love to be a ring announcer for WWE, TNA, AEW? Absolutely. I would love to do it. Realistically, it might not be out of the realm of possibilities. You just never know. But my goal is to be able to go to different promotions, give them the professional look that a ring announcer should have. Because a ring announcer is the first person that fans see going into a show. I want to bring the energy for whoever I work for, and they got to know that they are in for a show. They're going to have a good time, and they're going to go home happy. They're going to go home forgetting about the real world problems for a little bit. That's what wrestling is to me. And I would love to keep spreading that love and positivity as much as I can, because I feel like that my story can be an inspiration to some. And um I'm blessed to be here. I'm blessed to be just breathing every single day. And every day that I'm here, it's a good day.
And it definitely is. When you talk about ring announcers, who are some of your influences, people that you look up to, and that kind of help, implement your style?
So locally, there was a ring announcer, and he's still going. He's still kicking butt. His name's Slick Rick Toms. He was with the NWF when I first saw him, and the MWA when I went as a fan. Um, he was their commentator, and he or not commentator, but ring announcer, and he brought so much energy, and he still does. His style is unique, and it's one of the styles that I kind of incorporate a little bit, but I'm not going to be the guy that steals the style. I got to take what I see and turn it into something of my own. So I always liked Slick Rick because he brought the power. Gary Michael Capetta is one of my other favorite ring announcers because he never had that traditionally low voice as a ring announcer, but he enunciated it so well. He brought his own style. So Gary Capetta was another great one. And of course, you can never doubt the Fink.
Mm-hmm. No, he's a
All time
legend.
great.
Yes, Hall of Famer, someone that millions of fans still remember to this day as one of the greatest of all time. So those are great influences.
Yeah, and I tell you what, it's what I do. Never, it's never going to be. My style is never going to be the same thing over and over again because I'm going to try to find new things to incorporate into it, just to kind of make it that much better. So studying, still is a big part of what I do.
Yeah, definitely is. And you mentioned a few minutes ago that you've gotten to rub shoulders with some of the greats, some of the legends. You've bumped into so many talents. Who are some other legends that you have got to meet over the years during your time in the business?
Oh gosh. Okay. So um we'll start with some of the earlier ones. So MWA was actually they had a partnership with the NWF, and the NWF is where Wildcat Chris Harris came from and where Abyss came from. So I got to see both of them before. Um, Crimson, when before he was Crimson, he was No Mercy Tommy Mercer. So I got to see him in his early years. And it was great because when I saw him wrestle, I was just like, man, this kid's got it. And he sure enough, I mean, woo, he went on. Um, let's see here. So Jacob Duncan from OVW. I've gotten to know him, and I see him around every once in a while. He still lives here in Kentucky. Um, I got to commentate for Vader.
Mm.
Um, I I've gotten to meet Dutch Mantel. Funny story about him. Um, so Dutch was getting set for this show we were having for Pro Wrestling Freedom, and he had his whip with him. And my wife was actually our sound person for Pro Wrestling Freedom for a while,
Oh,
and
cool. That's very
she's
nice.
oblivious to what was going on behind her. She heard the cracks and stuff, but she was like, she wasn't thinking. Dutch took that whip and just cracked it right behind her. I've never seen her move so quick in my life. And he was just hee hawing. I mean, he was having a good old day of it. So
Yeah. Mhm.
Dutch was a prankster.
Mhm.
So and I don't know if he still is or not, but that was pretty funny.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um I've gotten to commentate for Chuck Taylor. Um I've been able to ring announce for Adam Pierce. That was probably one of my coolest moments, only because after the show was over, he was in the main event. After the show was over, he seeked me out personally, and he came up to me. He said, "Man, you are one. I'm going to censor it. You're one heck of an effing ring announcer." So he said
Yeah,
you're very good out there. Keep doing what you're doing. That was validation.
definitely the
Um,
seal of approval.
oh yeah, absolutely. It is official, as he would say.
Yes.
Um, let's see here. When we started back with when I started back with New South and Generation Next, I've had guys like Billy Gunn, the Guns, his sons, Camille, Tatanka, Jerry Lawler, Doug Gilbert. Um, let's see here. Oh my gosh, there's been so many. Booker T. Booker T did a one off with us for New South when he was one of his guys. Matty Ice wrestles for us or wrestled for us, and he Booker T came up for a big show, and there's a TikTok out there, but Booker T backed me into a corner, and I was not ready for it. It was he gave me the stare down and everything. It was great. Um, afterwards, I went up to him. I said I was not ready for that. He said, brother, I just had to mess with you. I just had to do it one time. So it was cool. One of my favorite people too is Jay Lethal.
Mm,
Jay Lethal is
yeah.
just all around cool dude. Um, you don't have I don't have a bad thing to say about that man. He gives back. He wants to see the wrestling business grow as a whole. He did a seminar for some of these guys, and what was cool was like when he said, I'm going to come back and I'm going to do another seminar. He said, if you guys were in this one, you're not paying me another dollar. You're going coming to this next one for free, and we're going to keep elevating. And that's what he was. So that was really cool. Um, Josh Alexander, I've announced for him a couple times. Congo Kong, Congo has become one of my favorite people in the business. Like whenever I see him, it's always good to see you, and I like working with him. Lord Crew, he just came off of a tour of Japan, and hopefully he gets to go back soon. He's starting to make some waves. There are so many people. Of course, Larry D. I've watched Larry D. grow from little Larry D. to legendary Larry D. and got to see his Impact run. I've worked with Rhino a few times. Um, I'll have a chance to do some production with Heath Slater later this year for a big show in Jenkins, Kentucky. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot, and really, it's so hard to go through the list. The Tate twins, I've done a lot with the Tate twins. At the time, they were the boys. One of my favorite shows that I ever got to do. Let's see here. This event right here. I don't know if you can see it very well, but this manager right here, his name was Jim Chadwick. He passed away a few years ago, but he was one of the most influential guys that I've been able to talk to in the wrestling business, and he had a big influence on me as well. He always taught me just to be cool, be relaxed, and he always was going to he was going to mess with you if he could, just to keep things loose.
Yeah,
So um, we did a tribute to the gentleman. This was back in 2022. One of my favorite things that we were able to do was with him, or was an event for him. Um, a few months ago, I got to meet Ricky the Dragon Steamboat as well. He did a meet and greet before an Appalachian Mountain Wrestling show. So that was really cool. Nice guy, amazing guy. He brought his Intercontinental Championship, so kind of a cool moment to be able to hold that. I was smiling from ear to ear. So it's wrestling. It's such a cool community, especially when you're around the right people. And
definitely.
I've been absolutely blessed to be around those right people, and I'm also blessed to know that there are wrestlers out there that are appreciating what I do for them. And to all those who have said something to me about that, I can't thank you enough, because it's validation, and it makes me feel like I'm in the right place doing the right thing.
Yeah, and when you're with that family, you know you're in good hands. And
Mhm.
it seems like you have met a lot of people, met a lot of cool people, have made connections that'll last a lifetime.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the rosters that I'm working with right now, they're some of the best around. And the Generation Next roster, that those are the majority of those wrestlers are trained by Larry D. And a lot of those kids and a lot of those wrestlers, that they have a great future ahead of them. One guy in particular, I'm going to put him over here. His name's Jackie Thad. He is their champion, but he's starting to pop up in a lot of other places too. Um, I think I know he's doing stuff up in Emerge Wrestling, and I think he was doing some stuff for, I guess it was Southern States Pro, maybe. It's what turned back into Atlanta Wrestling Entertainment, what that promotion was. So he was doing like a Young Guns tournament with them, and that kid's going to be good. Alexis Littlefoot, she came from that school as well, and Alexis just had a match on AEW at Rupp Arena when they were there for their last Dynamite event. So it wasn't aired on TV, but she got to be in that ring and got to work with Nyla Rose. So big shout out to Alexis too. I mean, a lot of great wrestlers.
And the cool thing is independent wrestling, this is the best time for the indies, I feel like,
Oh yeah,
because so much talent out there, man. It is crazy. And you just never know where these people are going to end up, because they've just got a lot of really talented people right now out there doing some good stuff. So ne
100%.
never say never. I think that you'll be in for a good time once you see some of these people make it to prime time.
And listen, I'm going to implore every single one of you here, okay? If you haven't gone to an indie event, do it. It's going to be the best time you have. The money can go a long way. You're not paying 50, 60, 70, $80 for a ticket. You're going to walk in, you're going to pay, 10, 15, 20, $25, and indie wrestling, it's a lot more accessible than um than WWE, TNA, AEW, because wrestlers are going to be out selling shirts, selling pictures, taking pictures with you. Take advantage of it, because you never know who is going to be that next person to move up in the wrestling business. So take advantage of it, because and it's great, because that's where memories can be made. And I was able to take I was able to bring my little cousin to a show, and Larry D was on the card, and he just loved every moment seeing him in that match, and he was so excited to get a picture with his older cousin and Larry together. It's that kind of memories that stay with you. And I guess you would say it would be core memories, because
Yes,
you make core memories doing that kind of stuff.
exactly. Aaron, this has been wonderful getting the chance to speak with you. It means a lot to me and to my listeners, and I want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Where can people find more about you on social media?
I'm all over the place. You can find me on Facebook at ring announcer Aaron Rose. If you're on the TikToks, you can get me at Aaron RKY, or just search ring announcer Aaron. I'm on Instagram as Aaron RKY1, Threads as well. They kind of all ties in together. And then if you look for me on X or Twitter, I'm under something completely different. I'm under Prep Spin Aaron. I work for a high school production company on the side as well. We do high school sporting events, and Prep Spin is the name of it. One of the top companies in Kentucky. So big shout out to Prep Spin and William, who runs that. I love every minute with them. They help out with some of our wrestling events too, giving some really good production. Big shout out to them. So you can find me on X at Prep Spin Aaron.
All right. Well, Aaron, thanks again, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Absolutely. I would love to, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Take care.
All right, you too.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.